Or what?
They're leaning into woke. Hardcore.
They're petrified.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
Nobody
Who
wants
wants
that.
a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? It's the outrage.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
Disney's Snow White remake was supposed to be a fresh take on a beloved classic, but instead it quickly spiraled into one of the most controversial films in recent memory. With a star-studded cast, a hefty budget, and all the makings of a successful reimagining, it should have been an instant hit. But what went wrong? How did Disney manage to take a timeless fairy tale and turn it into a political battleground, alienating its loyal fanbase in the process? In this video, we're diving deep into the behind-the-scenes chaos, the public backlash, and the film's shocking box office failure. Hold on tight, because this story is far from the happily ever after you might have expected. When Disney first announced Rachel Zegler as the new Snow White, fans were buzzing with excitement. After all, she had just delivered an unforgettable performance in West Side Story, earning critical acclaim and solidifying her as a rising star. She seemed like the perfect choice to bring a fresh face to a classic character. The idea of a live-action Snow White with a modern twist felt like it could be something truly magical, until Zegler opened her mouth. In early interviews, she didn't just express excitement about playing the iconic princess. She went on to slam the original Snow White, 1937, as outdated, weird, and even problematic. She called out the classic for its portrayal of the love story, claiming it was creepy and unhealthy. To fans of the original, this was a slap in the face. For decades, the love story between Snow White and the prince was one of Disney's most cherished elements, a symbol of innocence and romance. But Zegler's dismissive attitude made it clear this was going to be a very different Snow White, and not in a good way. As the first wave of interviews rolled out, the public began to get a glimpse of what was in store. Instead of a tribute to the original film, Disney seemed intent on completely reinventing the story, not just updating it, but replacing its core themes with a new, more modern agenda. And that was just the beginning. One of the most significant changes in Disney's Snow White remake was the decision to completely abandon the beloved love story between Snow White and the prince. For generations, fans have cherished the idea of a fairy tale romance where the princess is swept off her feet by a handsome prince. It was the heart of the original Snow White, and for many, it symbolized the magic and purity of Disney's fairy tales. But Rachel Zegler had other ideas. In interviews, she bragged about ditching the traditional love story, stating that Snow White didn't need a man to fulfill her. While the idea of a strong, independent princess isn't inherently problematic, it was the way Zegler framed it that rubbed fans the wrong way. She didn't just modernize Snow White, she seemed to actively mock the very concept of love and companionship that defined the original. This shift in focus wasn't just a minor tweak, it was a complete overhaul of the core message of the film. Instead of a warm, romantic tale about true love conquering all, the new Snow White turned into a sermon on female independence. Disney's attempt to make the princess more empowered ended up alienating longtime fans who had grown up with the magic of the original story. Instead of feeling inspired by a beautiful love story, they felt as if Disney was trying to push an agenda at the expense of the very elements that made Snow White a timeless classic. The question remained, could Snow White truly be Snow White without her prince? Fans didn't think so, and as the film's release drew nearer, it became clear that the movie was at risk of losing its charm and its soul in the process. Just when you thought the drama couldn't get any more intense, Rachel Zegler's outspoken political views added fuel to the fire. While an actress's personal opinions aren't usually enough to sink a film, Zegler's comments struck a nerve with a massive portion of the audience. As the Snow White marketing machine revved up, Zegler took to social media, unleashing a series of controversial posts that did little to endear her to fans. Most notably, she openly blasted Trump supporters, calling them vile names and expressing her desire that they never know peace. It wasn't just a one-off comment either. Zegler doubled down on her views in interviews, further alienating half the country. For many viewers, the idea of supporting a film where the lead actress seems so openly hostile toward their political beliefs was a bridge too far.
Like this is America right now. I will love you through these 4 years as best I can. F Donald Trump. Yeah.
So she came out and took a large dump on half of the country, everyone who voted for Trump.
This wasn't just a minor issue, it was a public relations disaster. Disney had spent years cultivating a family-friendly brand that was beloved by audiences across the political spectrum. But with Zegler's comments, they risked turning off an entire demographic, including families and parents who wanted to take their children to see the movie. Many fans felt as if Disney had abandoned them in favor of pushing a political narrative that didn't belong in a fairy tale. For Disney, this backlash created a serious dilemma. Should they distance themselves from Zegler's comments and attempt to salvage the film's image? Or should they stand by their star and embrace the controversy? The studio chose to try to handle the situation, but by then, the damage was already done. Fans were furious, and the idea of supporting a film that seemed so openly divisive became untenable for many. This political firestorm only added to the growing list of reasons why this Snow White remake was quickly losing favor. If you thought the drama couldn't escalate further, Disney took it to the next level with the decision to completely remove the iconic dwarfs from Snow White. The dwarfs, who played a pivotal role in the original 1937 animated classic, were beloved by audiences for their charm, humor, and warmth. But when actor Peter Dinklage, a prominent advocate for the rights of little people, voiced his concerns about the outdated portrayal of dwarves, Disney scrambled to address the controversy. Instead of tweaking the dwarfs' roles or casting little people in a more respectful manner, Disney chose to scrap the characters entirely. Early leaks hinted at a bizarre replacement, magical creatures no longer the lovable dwarves, but CGI creatures that felt like a strange and unnecessary addition. Fans were outraged, feeling that Disney had erased a key part of Snow White's magic in an attempt to appease the politically correct agenda. But the chaos didn't stop there. Rumors started to swirl that the dwarfs were being replaced by diverse bandits, further complicating the already convoluted film. Disney even reportedly reshot portions of the film to introduce this new element, but the damage had been done. In trying to avoid the appearance of insensitivity toward little people, Disney had completely undermined the story's beloved characters, leaving audiences confused and frustrated. Critics were quick to point out the hypocrisy in Disney's decision. The studio touted the casting of a Latina Snow White as a progressive move, but in doing so, they completely overlooked the opportunity to cast little people in the roles of the dwarfs, roles that would have provided meaningful representation. Instead of embracing diversity in a way that felt true to the story, Disney's attempt to be more woke resulted in the removal of job opportunities for the very community that could have benefited the most. Fans weren't having it. The magic of the dwarfs was gone, replaced by characters that felt like hollow placeholders, and the film's identity crisis deepened. It was clear Disney had sacrificed the charm and heart of Snow White in an attempt to please everyone, and in doing so, they alienated nearly every audience segment. If you thought the removal of the dwarfs was the biggest mistake in Disney's Snow White remake, think again. The musical elements of the film turned out to be another major point of contention. For generations, Disney fans have adored the iconic songs from the 1937 Snow White, particularly Someday My Prince Will Come, which captured the innocence, hope, and magic of the original film. But Disney's remake didn't just update these songs, they replaced them with something completely unrecognizable. In a move that stunned fans, Disney decided to ditch the classic love anthem in favor of a new, modernized feminist song. The new track was supposed to convey empowerment, but instead of evoking the timeless spirit of Someday My Prince Will Come, it felt hollow and disconnected from the story. The new lyrics, "All you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo," left many scratching their heads. What did it even mean? It was a far cry from the heartfelt, simple wish for true love that resonated with audiences for decades. The new songs weren't just awkward, they were entirely out of place. Critics blasted them as preachy and jarring, with some calling them completely unnecessary additions that only padded out the film's runtime. It was as if Disney was more interested in making a statement than telling a compelling story, and the result was a soundtrack that left viewers cold rather than inspired.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
They spent $170 million to make the thing. It had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes.
go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
The shift in tone was especially jarring considering the way Disney had built its legacy around its unforgettable songs. Someday My Prince Will Come and other iconic tracks weren't just tunes, they were integral parts of what made Disney fairy tales magical. By replacing them with songs that didn't capture the same warmth or nostalgia, Disney seemed to be alienating the very audience who had grown up singing along to those classics. The decision to scrap the old songs and add modern, preachy ones only added fuel to the fire. Fans who had hoped for a reimagined version of Snow White with a blend of the old and new were left feeling betrayed. The lack of emotional connection in the music made it clear. Disney was more concerned with pushing a message than delivering the kind of timeless magic that made the original Snow White a beloved classic. After months of hype and anticipation, Disney's Snow White remake finally hit theaters, but the results were nothing short of catastrophic. Despite a massive $200 million production budget and the promise of a new take on a beloved fairy tale, the film opened to a staggering disappointment. Instead of the expected $150 million opening weekend, it crawled to a mere $43 million, making it one of the biggest flops in Disney's history. So what went wrong? Well, for starters, the film's tone was a hard sell to most audiences. The political controversy surrounding Rachel Zegler and her polarizing social media posts left many people unwilling to support a film that felt more like a battleground than a fairy tale. Parents who might have been excited to take their kids to see the new Snow White found themselves put off by the political messages and the film's lack of warmth and charm. The movie, which was supposed to be a magical escape, turned into a source of frustration for many, but the issues didn't stop there. The film's identity crisis, with its odd mix of modern feminist themes and a complete disregard for the original's heart and magic, only further alienated viewers. Longtime Disney fans who grew up with the original Snow White couldn't connect with the new woke approach to the story. Teens found it cringe-worthy, and critics were quick to tear into it for abandoning the classic's essence. The film didn't just miss the mark, it missed it completely. By week 2, the film had already started disappearing from theaters, and box office analysts were calling it one of the biggest bombs of the year. Even merchandise, like action figures and dolls, sat untouched on store shelves. Disney had poured millions into a film that, in the end, couldn't capture the magic of its predecessor or connect with its audience. The result? A major financial loss and a black mark on the studio's record. In short, Disney had gambled big on this remake, but the odds were stacked against them from the start. What should have been a guaranteed success turned into one of the worst box office results in recent Disney history. Fans were left wondering how a company known for creating magic could have failed so spectacularly. The aftermath of Snow White's disastrous box office performance was nothing short of chaotic for Disney. What was supposed to be a triumph for the studio quickly turned into a financial and PR nightmare. The movie's failure sent shockwaves through Disney's ranks, sparking rumors of major internal strife. Executives were reportedly scrambling to pinpoint what went wrong, and some even pointed to the toxic combination of Rachel Zegler's controversial statements, the film's mismanaged script, and the disastrous marketing strategy. Disney had always prided itself on creating films that appealed to a broad, global audience. But with Snow White, the company alienated a massive portion of its fan base. The backlash was swift and intense, with many viewers questioning how Disney could produce a film that felt so out of touch with its core values. This wasn't just about a movie failing, it was about Disney losing its magic, and that was something fans weren't willing to overlook. The fallout didn't just affect the movie itself, it had a ripple effect across the company. The film's underperformance added to the growing concerns about Disney's ability to connect with audiences, especially in a time when the company was attempting to modernize its classic films for new generations. Rumors circulated that layoffs were on the horizon as Disney struggled to recover from the financial flop. It was clear that Snow White was more than just a failed film. It was a sign that Disney's strategy might need a complete overhaul, but the real question was whether Disney would be able to learn from its mistakes. Would they continue to chase modern political narratives at the expense of their legacy, or would they return to what made them great in the first place, creating films that resonated with audiences emotionally, honoring the timeless stories that had made Disney a household name?
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime.
President Rachel Zegler also posted, F Trump kinds of posts on social media. She also
As the dust settled, one thing was clear. Snow White had forced Disney to face some hard truths. Their approach to remakes and modernizing classics had serious consequences, and it was now a waiting game to see how the company would navigate the future. Would this flop be a wake-up call for Disney, or would they continue down the path that had already led them to the brink of disaster? Only time would tell. After all the controversy, the backlash, and the box office disaster, one crucial question remains. Could Disney have saved Snow White? Could they have avoided this massive flop if they had made a few different choices along the way? The truth is, it's hard to say, but what we do know is that this film's failure highlights the dangers of straying too far from what made the original so beloved. Some fans argue that Snow White could have been a success if Disney had found a better balance between honoring the original and modernizing it for today's audience. They point to films like Frozen, which managed to balance female empowerment with warmth, magic, and romance. But in this case, Disney seemed intent on dismantling the very elements that made Snow White iconic. The result was a film that felt like a lecture rather than a fairy tale, a far cry from the heartwarming story audiences had hoped for. Others believe that the film was doomed from the start. The tone-deaf decisions, like Zegler's controversial statements, the political messaging, and the disregard for the classic story's charm, alienated too many people for it to succeed. Disney's attempt to push a political agenda at the expense of the film's magic and heart simply didn't resonate with the audience. And when you're dealing with a classic like Snow White, you can't afford to ignore the very things that made it so special in the first place. As for Rachel Zegler, her public persona became more of a burden than a benefit to the film. Her divisive social media posts and interviews seemed to overshadow her acting, creating a situation where audiences couldn't separate the actress from the film. Some argue that if Disney had cast someone else, someone less polarizing, the movie might have had a better shot, but others feel that the damage was already done long before the film hit theaters. In the end, Snow White serves as a cautionary tale for Disney and other studios. Fans don't want to see their favorite classics turned into vehicles for modern political messaging or agenda-driven storytelling. They want to feel the magic, the warmth, and the nostalgia that made the original so beloved. And when that's taken away, even the most well-intentioned remakes can quickly become a disaster. Disney's Snow White remake may have failed at the box office, but it's also left behind some important lessons. It's a reminder that no matter how much you want to update or modernize a classic, you can't lose sight of the things that made it great in the first place. Fans want respect for the legacy of the original, not a complete reinvention that alienates them at every turn. So could this movie have been saved? Maybe, but only if Disney had taken a step back and thought about what made Snow White magical in the first place, and remembered that you can't just replace a classic with something that feels cold and out of touch. The real question now is, will Disney learn from this colossal failure, or will they continue to take risks with their most cherished stories? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain, fans are watching closely and they're not ready to forgive and forget just yet. Disney's Snow White remake was more than just a box office flop, it was a wake-up call. The film's failure underscores a major disconnect between what audiences want and the direction Disney seems to be heading in. Fans of the original Snow White didn't want a politically charged, preachy reimagining of a beloved classic. They wanted magic, warmth, and romance, elements that made the original such a timeless fairy tale. This disaster has forced Disney to confront the reality that nostalgia and respect for the classics still hold immense power. Fans are loyal to the stories they grew up with, and when those stories are reshaped too radically, it's not just the film that suffers, it's the brand. Snow White could have been a modern retelling, a balance of the old and the new, but Disney's insistence on pushing a modern agenda at the expense of the original's charm alienated too many people. For Disney, this failure is a hard lesson in how not to handle remakes. If they plan to continue reimagining their classics, they'll need to find a way to keep the heart of the story intact while evolving with the times. It's clear that a more thoughtful approach is needed, one that respects the legacy of the original and understands that audiences want more than just a political statement from their favorite fairy tales.
The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
Rachel Zegler, she's an
As for Rachel Zegler, this experience will likely follow her for a long time. Her divisive public persona, combined with the film's failure, may have already cost her future opportunities in major Hollywood productions. While her talent can't be denied, it's clear that a more measured approach, both in terms of her public statements and the characters she chooses to play, might have served her better in this case. So what's next for Disney? Will they return to the drawing board with Snow White and other classic tales? Or will they keep pushing for a modernized vision that only alienates fans? One thing is for sure, the future of Disney's live-action remakes is now more uncertain than ever, and audiences are watching, waiting, and hoping that the magic they've loved for generations isn't completely lost in the pursuit of political correctness. What do you think? Could this movie have been saved with a different approach, or was it doomed from the start? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest controversies and failures.